it's time that you knew there's someone there who's searching for you, and it's time that you believe he's gonna find you.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Two Guys Fixing the World. My name is Mark Stallard, and with my good friend Ryan Jans. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing great, Mark. It's great to be here again.
Yes, it is.
Always a good time to get together, and even though we're not physically in the same room, but to talk about the things that we're passionate about. In this case, politics and the way politics interacts with all our lives.
Indeed. And this particular piece is actually part 4 in our 4-part series on minimum wage, and we are going to talk about what minimum wage actually really is, what it really is, and what the real end result is to working people. But as first, we just wanted to, in the last shows, if you want to go back and check that out, we would talk to definitions of minimum wage, just how it affects people, where it came from, a bit of history, and lots of good background stuff as well as some opinion work as well. I think we were talking about workers' co-ops and that kind of thing as well. But for now, as we move on, or actually before we do move on, if anyone's wherever you're listening to this, don't forget to like, subscribe, share. You looking for any details about the shows, or you want some repeat shows, you can links to all of our shows on all the platforms that can be found on fixingtheworld.ca. We're on all the major podcasting platforms, and we're also on Facebook and YouTube. So go check those out. Fixingtheworld.ca links to everything. Like, subscribe, share, follow, and all that other good stuff. So minimum wage. I think we're looking at the minimum wage as being a market-based solution, in that that when people tend to get paid the least that the company can believe they get away with, when there is high unemployment, it's easier for companies to ask for less or offer less money for work. But the thing is, it's not really providing payment or return for the true value of the work being done. So the question is, I think we brought this up in one of the early shows, is that how much is the work being done really worth to the people who are paying for it? Do you want to be the person to clean up the toilet after someone had an accident? There's mess all over the floor, someone's vomited and it's gross, but you're going to pay that person a minimum wage for something that you wouldn't be caught dead doing. So what's the real value of that? And I'm sure if that no one was doing it, you would pay someone probably a lot of money to clean it up. So what do you think on that point now, Ryan?
Well, it's interesting because I'm gonna keep on this example of cleaning up the toilet. So let's say you are a business owner. Let's say you have a franchise for like a large corporation, like a McDonald's or a Tim Hortons or one of those really big global restaurant franchises. And some person who comes in off the street, who looks like a street person and is homeless or something, or you have no idea. You actually have no idea about this person. You've never seen them before. Comes in and barfs all over the bathroom and just makes a total mess. You're gonna go send somebody in to clean that up, who's gonna be a minimum wage guy or slightly above. Problem is, if that were to happen in a hospital, they have like a whole procedure on how they clean that up. There's safe work practices. There's personal protective equipment. But you, as a McDonald's worker or Tim Hortons worker, are just expected to go in there with a mop and bucket. And the reason I kind of bring it up like this is that minimum wage, they're like, just go do it. That's your job, part of your responsibilities. But they haven't taken into consider your safety, your well-being, because that person could have been on drugs. They could have been sniffing solvents. There could be any number of things. They could have a communicable disease, right? So now you're touching bodily fluids. They're not providing you with adequate there. But and the reason I sort of set this ground is when you have someone who's in a minimum wage position, the assumption is that if you're going to reject it and leave, someone else is just going to fall in place. So they don't have to, because in their mind, it's more expensive to do it properly internally. But if you were to hire out a service, you're paying someone's workers' compensation board, you're paying for their personal protective equipment to properly clean up, and all their chemicals to make sure that everything's disinfected. So this whole idea of minimum wage for value, I agree with 100%. So if you're gonna send someone in to clean up the toilet after a stranger has come and desecrated your washroom, well, you better be prepared to outfit that worker properly. And I guess there's always ignorance. You could always claim ignorance for the first time and say, well, we didn't anticipate that, and that's fine. But if you keep having repeat incidents like this, at some point, you're going to be having to follow that up and say, oh, we didn't really anticipate this, Your Honor. And then you'll be at the mercy of the courts.
And excuse me. Yeah, we're looking at as well what you do, particularly if you think of someone on the factory floor. That's also maybe getting minimum wage as well. And you know, you may have dozens, if not hundreds, of people working on conveyor belts or people sewing garments or whatever, just producing something, and their efforts actually have value in and of themselves, right? They actually produce something. They provide, you know, for when you buy a product, that's, you know, someone's put some time and effort into it. There's value. That's value there, and you should pay more than the raw materials because there's value in the work and in the time that the people put into it. Yeah, so we've got I mean, it's kind of, I'm just kind of touching here on something I kind of found out about but reasonably recently, certainly within the last year or so, was the labor theory of value, and the idea that you are putting in pretty much what I just said. When you work, you put your time and your effort and your skills in. Maybe you produce something, maybe it's a service you're providing, but there's value to that, and you can be sure that whatever the value is that it is to the company, that they are getting paid, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 times more than you're getting paid for providing that service or creating that product or taking your part in it. And so the value there goes back to the company, and you don't receive anything for the fruits. You don't get to keep the fruits of your own labor. So what do you think about that, Ryan? What's your thoughts?
Yeah. When you look at the minimum wage jobs, yeah, that's absolutely correct. Now, even with non-minimum wage jobs, the industry that I work in is in the fire and life safety business. I know what my company pays me. They pay me decent for a licensed technician, but I also know what they often bill me out at, and it's quite higher than what I'm making. And now part of that is just because it is such a massive company, you have to bill high for that kind of thing, right? For it to survive. But when we're talking about a minimum wage company, especially when we're talking about a McDonald's or a Tim Hortons or like multi-billion-dollar global enterprises, paying people the lowest amount that they possibly can, just so that they can keep their product cheap so they can get the most amount of people through the door. And then it basically means that you're guaranteed to, because even full-time to them is usually 35 hours a week, which isn't a full-time wage, which means you're probably going to have to work a second job. So that's now 2 minimum wage jobs that you have to work at. And that puts you at whatever, $22 an hour. But unless you can work 16 hours a day, you're not going to make $20 an hour, which you probably need. So, it's.
Well, I mean, this whole labor theory of value affects everybody, right? I mean, yes, it's the minimum wage people that kind of get hit the most, who seem to work just as hard as everyone else. Maybe in some areas not in as many skill jobs, certainly some unpleasant jobs. You know that regardless of however much you're being paid as an employee, the company is making, like I said, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 times, maybe even more on your efforts. And like I said, as a contractor, or as you're contracting out, and you're Ryan, you're seeing the invoices go out. You know exactly what you're worth. When I started in IT, oh God knows, I was 1999, 98, I think. I got my MCSE, just got my MCSE, completely green, and never did a job before in IT, and I was getting paid. I think it was 30,000 a year, so it was like $15 an hour, which was pretty good money even then, certainly for an entry level. And they were billing me out. I remember no experience, and they were billing me out for $150. So I knew they were making lots. Yeah. So so this happens right across the board, and we can talk. We are going to be talking, I guess, in other shows about the abuses that we kind of go through, where we work hard, we create things that make life easier or make things smoother. We sort through processes, we use our creativity, in my case, written scripts, and save the companies tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And I see nothing in it. And that's all part of that, is you're not getting paid for the fruits that you've done. And so that's kind of why I bring that up. And I'm a big advocate of co-ops. So co-ops and self-employment and working for yourselves, or we were working for each other.
Yeah, and again, I'm only hesitant because I know I have a certain amount of a clause for my company that I can't reveal too much.
And then please don't. I don't want you to lose your job. As unhappy as we might be about the pay.
I would get they're pretty fair. That I'd actually get a written reprimand. I'd have their, So So what I can do is I can actually make a generalization. As a fire alarm technician, fully licensed through the Canadian Fire Alarm Association and through the Office of the Fire Commissioner here in Manitoba with my limited electrician's license, the sort of the median wage that we get paid as a trade is somewhere around, I would say around $25 an hour. That's someone who would have worked a little bit, got their license, and then is now working steady as a fully licensed technician. That's what, $25 an hour. I won't tell you what our company bills out, but it's not uncommon for most companies to go up 4 times what they pay me. That at $25 an hour. So that's about $100 an hour, 4 times. So if you think about, we'll take it back to what you were saying. If they use the Tim Hortons model and or the McDonald's model, and we all got paid minimum wage or slightly higher, and they even billed at the same rate at $100 an hour, that would be an order of magnitude more. That would be like 10 times the amount of money that they're paying me.
Yep.
And that's really wrong. That's really wrong. Like you could say that, yeah, okay, well, they do provide me a van and that's all taken care of, but that's also billed out as it's not even Chubb who owns the vehicle, or I'm sorry, the company that I work for that owns the vehicle. It's a fleet management company that owns the vehicle, and our decals are just on it. And so it's their responsibility. So we don't even, they just send us a bill at the end of the month or whatever it is, quarterly. I don't know what it is. It's out of my scope of there, but it all just gets factored in. You can say, okay, well, it's expensive to run all this and that and the other thing, and it's a global company, and they actually do treat us pretty well. But for a guy like myself who has to commission a building and is often one of the last trades on, and you definitely won't get building occupancy, especially for something that's intended to be occupied like an apartment overnight. You definitely won't get it without me signing off. That's a lot of weight to be putting on my shoulders. Like, let's forget that I work for a big company, and let's say I even move on and I decide I want to go into business for myself. 5 years later down the road, if a building burns down, even though I don't work for that company anymore, I'm still liable because they trace it back and says, oh, this should have been fixed from the get-go. And it's like, oh. So you can imagine that, and that's me as a working professional, right? And being paid a professional wage. Imagine what would happen if the median wage was more like what you said, $15 an hour to start.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago.
And then, yeah, and that's 20 years ago, and that's actually not too different than what I was doing when I was hustling out printers and repairing printers, because they've suddenly just decided that industry is not worth paying guys more than you might make 20 if you've been there 15 or 20 years. Yeah. And I know everybody likes to think it's all a paperless world, but wait till you get a printer jam. We all know that.
Yeah.
As soon as you get a printer jam, especially in a big office, man, people are losing their minds. So a skilled worker and a skilled trade like that, how do they not get picked up by things like Apprenticeship Canada? How do they not get labor unions and things like that to protect their workers? Because it's not an essential service, but it's pretty important.
Yeah, well, that's another show that we definitely must do, unions in the workplace. And let me just say that they've been demonized since the 1970s, certainly the late 1970s. Anyhow, back on track. We allowed ourselves, I think it was a necessary thing to talk about. But back on track with the minimum wage particularly are affected by these things that we're talking about, because much of what is happening with with minimum wages, that they get accused of time theft, right? And we all do. I mean, there's something that we might get accused of. That's something fairly recent. If you clock in a couple of minutes late, or you leave a couple of minutes early, or you take a slightly longer lunch, well, then you get they get accused of that, and it's always one way. It's always in favour of the company, and never in favour of you. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the next little bit here, but it's never really talked the other way around. Because they're not paying people minimum wage who's working 40 hours, a fair wage, they have to go now and spend even more of their life doing another job for tiny amounts of money, so that they can maybe have a chance of making ends meet. That's true time theft. That is absolute theft of their time. And there's no recovering from that either, right? You can't, it's not like, oh, I made 500 grand this year, I'll go buy some more time. You can't, it's gone. And you've had nothing in return for it.
Yeah, that's right. And even that is like, just to imagine, and this is not an unplausible scenario. Imagine you are a single parent, or you have a family, you have a newborn baby. So maybe someone's taking parental leave and the other person's working. And imagine you can only work lower paying minimum wage or slightly better than minimum wage jobs. And now you don't have that income, or your benefits don't kick in, or if we are even worse in the States where they don't have paid maternity leave, even our maternity leave is comparable to EI, which is only 55% of your wage. So if it's 55% of your wage and you're only making minimum wage, that's like $6.50 an hour.
Yeah.
So that's pretty ridiculous. But imagine the scenario where you've got a newborn baby, your partner is at home because they're taking the parental leave. You go out and work and realize that even with the benefits, it's not enough. So now you take on a second job for the same pay, and you have to be away for 16 hours a day just to make ends meet, just so that your kid doesn't starve, and your partner, and you can meet all your obligations. And now your partner's completely wiped because they're with the kid all day and they need a break, understandably so. And you need a break because you've been working 16 hours a day.
Yep.
And so that's a reality for many people.
Yeah.
Right?
Even looking at,
you don't get that time back. You don't get that. You've now missed that time with your partner, and you've now missed that time with your kid.
Right, and that happens when, for those of us, you and I are both on call at our particular positions. When you get a call, that's it. That's the weekend you don't get. I was on call last Christmas, or Christmas 2018, and I spent 20 hours over that week on call. I lost Christmas.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll rant a bit more about that a little bit later when I, but that's it, right? It's
Yeah.
I mean, in that particular case, I didn't get paid for all of that. So when when people do work a little bit longer, and I mean, yes, I'm professional. I'm a professional. I'm not making horrible money. If I made any less, I'd be in trouble. That's for sure. But they tend to make you work longer, trick you into working longer, say it's bad attitude if you don't work a little bit longer. And then they refuse to pay you overtime because you didn't get explicit approval.
Yeah.
How many times? Now that is a true wage theft. Right there. That's time theft, wage theft, whatever you want to call it. Right there.
Yeah. Now, I agree. The on-call thing is really difficult, and there are ways to sort of mitigate that, especially over holiday season, so that everybody gets a fair share takes their fair share. The way we do it at my company is that week of Christmas, everybody gets 1 day, so nobody loses an entire week. Everybody gets 1 day. But the flip side is we only have about 1 or 2 clients that we absolutely have to respond to if they want service. And we have, unless, because I work as a fire alarm technician, unless the fire department is there and the thing is an alarm, I don't have to go. I'm going to tell the guy, like, look, you're paying double time and a half for a minimum of 3 hours. And I do get those 3 hours. That's not just a billing ploy. I actually get paid 3 hours. My company actually handles our overtime pretty well.
Yeah.
But I have worked for companies. When I had apprenticed many years ago as a pipe fitter, basically you carry here's me as a first level apprentice, right? And someone calls me at 11 o'clock at night and says, hey, I want my water heater changed out. I was like, well, that'll be like $2,200 now, or you can wait until about 7 o'clock in the morning and I'll drop by and it'll cost you $1,100. And if I went to that call, I would get 1 hour, however long it took me to do it. Even though I spent time with the guy talking to him on the phone, explaining the price structure. I had to go get fittings from the shop. I had to go, but it's a tiered, there was a structured pricing. So it was $2,200 on call. I get an hour of that.
Yeah.
And a first level apprentice makes about at best $17 an hour.
Yeah. Well, so at least you and
I just made them.
Yeah, I'd say at least you and I were in a position where it doesn't hurt. It still kind of hurts a little bit when we're not, when we kind of get screwed over the times and everything else. But people on minimum wage, I mean, it's life and death, right? I mean, we spend our entire life, working life is, you greet someone at work and and you have a little joke. Oh, I can't wait till Friday. And I'll laugh. No, I'll make a joke, and I do it quite commonly actually. As oh, there we go, wishing our lives away, but we really are wishing our lives away. We don't want to be there. We'd rather be somewhere else. A lot of people are not even enjoying what they're doing, and we're not getting compensated fairly. We think, particularly minimum wage people, are absolutely not getting compensated fairly. And this kind of leads on to the last series of points there. That minimum wage, explicitly minimum wage, is life theft. Again, we talked about having to work 2 jobs. You're not getting that time back.
Yep.
But there are some other areas that really kind of irk me. Is the inhuman amount of bereavement time. In Manitoba, you lose a child, 2 days paid. That's it. You are supposed to get over with it within 2 days. That's insane. And then you've got the paid vacation. That's another insane thing that you're losing part of your life there. Because you think about this, Iran gets 4 weeks vacation. In Manitoba, we get 2 weeks. Now we will do a show on vacation time and all that kind of stuff. But let's just kind of point that out. There's just as a way that lives are gone and you get paid almost nothing for it.
And there's an interesting point here. Is like, if you use the car for work, the business can write it off as an expense, but use the private individual, you can't write that off. Basically, what'll end up happening is the only case they get is like, hey, can you do this for me on my way home? Yeah, pay me 30 cents a mile or 50 cents a click or whatever the mileage rate works out to. well, no, we don't want to do that. Just do it on your way home.
Yeah.
Are you going to pay me? Do I get paid the extra hour for driving? No, just drop this off on your way. No, I'm sorry, I don't work for free.
Yeah, and I
I
might be.
don't, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and on that, it's just think that it's the companies that make profits. They come away with more than they started with. An employee gets a compensation for their time. They don't make more. They don't get anything more back. It's just compensation for time, regardless of your wage. But yeah, the company that's making profit gets to save money on those kinds of expenses. You still there, Ryan? I think we ended.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
hang on a
for
second.
sure.
Hang on a sec.
Yeah, no, I'm still here.
You died. We'll
I'm
reset that in a
still
second. Just is that your camera that died, or is that you gone?
My internet. I don't know if it's really choppy, but we've frozen a
Okay.
couple of times while we've been talking. So if there's times where I feel like I've made a point and then
Okay, yeah,
Obviously,
that
there's a big
was the
one
first
silence,
time I
it's
actually
yeah.
lost you on the screen. That's why I kind of stopped.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So I'll try and recover here as an edit.
it's never it's always a normal show when something goes wrong, right?
Here we go. Yeah. So again, I got another point on here as well. It irks me that you'll get stopped by a train, and
Yeah.
you're on your way to work. You're not late yet, but as soon as you hit that train, you're stuck 10 minutes. Now you're late, and you look at all the cars, and every time I look at the cars, I go, I wonder how many of these people are hourly, and they have to clock in, and how much money they're going to lose, how much money is lost,
Yeah.
or stress that's caused by the fear that, oh no, I might not make the full amount of money that I need while you're waiting there. But the train company makes money, and that's all that matters. And we're going out of our way to pretty much do companies a favor by making them money, for crying out loud. And in the end, we've got to pay the expenses to get there and all that other stuff. But that's another show, I think.
Yeah, and it's another thing too. Is like we, this is often talked about at some of our meetings where it's like, hey, you can't start the clock if you don't have to come to the office. You can't start the clock from when you leave the house and bill from you're leaving the house to your first job site. So you're expected there at 8. So I'm supposed to get there between 8 and or between 7:30 and 8. That's a normal commute time, half an hour. But I can't bill you for that.
Yeah.
And then they come back and say, "Well, we can't charge the customer for that." Well, why not?
Yeah.
Why can't you charge the customer? Well, they just won't pay it. Well, then what are we? It's
that's right.
absurd to think
It is an absurdity because if you
we're afraid of the customer.
now here's something that gets some from frowning faces at work with my guys. I'm a supervisor, so I've got a couple of guys under me, and just trying to explain to them that if they go to one of our second locations, I'm not going to say the name of the company for the same reasons you're not, Ryan. But we can, and this is standard practice. There's nothing unusual about this. So if you, they're not paying you for your journey to work or your journey home. But if I go from the main location and I go to the second location, they'll pay mileage. And if I go from the second location to during the workday back to the main location, I get mileage. However, if I go straight to the other location that's further away, I don't get mileage if I go straight there. So in order for anyone to get paid that both ways, which is what they should be being paid, is you have to go to the main office where you work and then do the trip to the second office and back, and then you get paid. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But they'll pay in the day, but they're not going to pay the mileage outside of the day, even though it's the same thing. That's legislated, so they kind of have to, which is why they do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's just an absurdity that it's like just trying to explain to people why they won't pay for your trip to the other location if you go straight there. And they encourage you to go straight there so they don't have to pay. Anyhow, so I think we're kind of at the end of that one. It went a little bit beyond minimum wage, but I think that it kind of goes on to just show just how much it hurts people that are a little bit are getting on the lower end of the pay scale. That these things hurt them more because at least people who are getting paid more have at least some kind of compensation for it. Although I don't believe that I am being compensated for my life. I definitely don't have to work 2 jobs. So there's that. So anything you want to add, Ryan, before we close off?
Well, I think it really just alludes to the fact that there's a bigger problem. It's like we've talked about minimum wage, and if you listen to our last few episodes on this topic, you see that we're really advocating for people who work minimum wages and why it's just a real load. But you can see that the same kind of stuff actually affects us as working professionals, not just as minimum wage people, right? It definitely hurts the minimum wage worker more, but it also hurts us too. So this is really just a symptom of a much deeper problem that's gone on, of how corporations can treat people and how businesses can treat people, and what is acceptable and what is the maximum amount that we can make someone work before we are legally entitled, or they're legally entitled, or we get into trouble. And it's that kind of extremism that we're trying to just bring to everybody's attention. Because the truth is, we do this to inform, but nothing's going to happen unless everybody gets on board with this, right? Maybe this is the start of a revolution. I don't know. We'll see. But it definitely is a symptom of a bigger problem. And like we had said in other episodes, if they're saying, "Hey, we'll pay you $15 an hour, but you're only going to work 20 hours a week," that's a minimum wage job.
Yep.
That's not a job.
It really is.
So, and I think we beat this one to death. So I think we'll bring it into land. Anything else, Mark? Or
no, I think we're good. I just reminded everybody, just for the more detailed show notes for past shows, for links to other areas you can. You can reach us to listen to our broadcasts, to contact information and everything else. Go to fixingtheworld.ca, and there'll also be announcements for upcoming shows as we have them. And thank you for listening. So thanks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and whatever you kids do these days. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll catch you soon.
He's gonna find you.